Today my guest is Dr. Sylvia Hart Frejd.
Technology has so much good to offer and so many wonderful parts to it, but it also can be very destructive.
Welcome to Heritage of Truth. Today my guest is Dr. Sylvia Hart Frejd. Welcome, Sylvia.
Thank you, Jeanne, so much for having me on your show.
Well, I am really excited to have you on my show because of your new book, The Digital Invasion, How Technology is Shaping You and Your Relationships. Wow. Why are you passionate about this? I'm passionate about this topic, and I want to know why you are.
Yes. Well, I say the digital invasion came to my home. I had just had a real wake-up call with my son, who was very addicted to his video gaming, and I really wanted to find ways to help him. And I have to say, I have to look at my own life, and I was sitting on my laptop till bedtime and texting all the time, and my kids started saying, "Look at Mom, she's digitally invaded." So that's where the digital invasion came to our home.
Okay. Well, how is it rewiring our brains and changing us?
Yeah, that's really our main concern here, is that our brains are being rewired for distraction, really by distraction. And so all of the multitasking that we do with all our digital gadgets is causing our brains really to be overloaded, because our brains really work better when we do one thing at a time. And so that's making our brains, the front part of our brain, have a 10 to 20% shrinkage in the prefrontal cortex.
That's terrible.
It is. And so that's the area that helps us to have empathy, to have impulse control, self-regulation. And so those things are being diminished with the rewiring. It's making us very shallow as well.
Wow. Well, how does the digital world affect relational attachments with parents and relatives and friends?
Yeah. So what's happening is, as I said, our brains are becoming very shallow.
Right.
We like things to be in sound bites.
Yeah.
And the main concern with that is, to have intimacy, we need to have conversations. And Jeanne, that's really what's missing. We're not having conversations. We're having a lot of connections. We're hyper-connected. But it's not really meaningful heart-to-heart conversations.
What would your advice be to the parent of a teen who spends all day with their technology and not interacting with people?
Yeah, so that was my story. With my son, I would say, let's go to the movies, let's go mini golfing, let's go camping. He didn't want to do anything. Oh, no, just leave me in the basement with my video games. And that's a real concern. So I've lived that. And the first thing is, really, I advise parents to not listen to their kids, to not listen when they say, "I don't want to go." Really, you have to almost force your kids to turn the smartphone off, to turn the gaming systems off, and to get outside and to do real life things. And so that's really important, that the parent take the lead in that. And the biggest thing I found for me was, I had to close my laptop lid, and I had to put my smartphone away and really take the time and initiative to get him into real life.
Yeah. So sometimes you just don't answer the telephone when it rings if you're talking with your child, that kind of thing, right?
Right.
What are the signs of a technology addiction?
I just want to say that internet addiction is the most common now addiction that we're seeing. And so some of the signs are very much like other addictions. If a person gets irritable, that they can't be on their phones or play games, they find themselves getting very irritable or anxious. And a lot of it is, how much time do they spend in their virtual life? If you're spending more time in your virtual life than your real life, you probably have an addiction. The internet addiction disorder that's being diagnosed in the DSM-5 says if you spend more than 38 hours a week online, which is interesting because research shows, Jeanne, that most of us are spending more than 38 hours a week online. So I'd like to say today, it's not a matter of if you're addicted, but how bad do you have it?
Whoa, I had no idea it was that bad. What is the best way to battle it?
Right.
Since it looks like most everyone has it, how do you
Absolutely.
What do you do about it?
Well, and that's really what our book's about. We're really trying to help people say, You need to have a digital wellness plan. You need to be a good steward of your technology. Technology has so much good to offer and so many wonderful parts to it, but it also can be very destructive. And so to really wake up to your relationship with technology, and it's going to be different than yours. Each one of us, it's going to be different. Maybe it's Instagram for some, or Facebook, or texting. But to be aware of that, and I like to have my clients, and in the book, have them keep a digital usage log. So that just means you write down the amount of time you're on Facebook or that you're in those applications, so you can start getting a feel. If you really want to know what you're addicted to, try to fast from it.
Right.
That'll show you really quickly what you're drawn to. So it's limiting the time that you're on those digital applications. And then journaling, just kind of like with other addictions. When you can't be on Facebook or on Instagram, what kind of feelings are you having? So you can see that many of us, like one man said, my drug of choice begins with www. To get that feeling of why am I feeling lonely? Am I feeling bored? What are the reasons why I'm feeling like this technology is the answer?
So does technology cause depression, or is it a form of depression? What is it?
Well, we find that people that already have addictions to other substances are at higher risk for developing a digital addiction because they kind of have that. But a lot of people, if we're talking about social media addictions, a lot of people are lonely and are drawn to that, but now we have a thing called Facebook depression, where we're realizing that a lot of time on Facebook can make you depressed.
Wow. That's interesting. Do you think that's because they feel like they don't have as many friends as somebody else, or is it because they're not getting enough interaction, or what do you think it is?
Well, absolutely. The friends part is a big part of it. They look and think, well, I have 200 friends, but Susie's got 1,000. Well, what's up with that? Don't people like me? I think that's a part of it. We call it the comparing and the competing and the contrasting that the Facebook produces. So we read texts or we read posts that say, my husband's the best, or my wife's the best, or I have the best kids, and we see these pictures to Hawaii, and we really can start feeling like, wow, my life doesn't measure up, and that sense of loss is where we can feel depressed.
Oh, that seems like a pretty dangerous thing.
Yes.
Now, are you a counselor? Is that what you are? Okay, and so you actually have, when you mention clients, you actually try and help people with these addictions?
Right. Yes. I'm certified in internet addiction, and this is really on, we're seeing just the beginnings of it. So I work with people to help them to, in all areas of their life, not just their virtual life, because we have emotional, spiritual, relational, and this virtual life that we have to manage and learn how to be a good steward of it.
Do you have pretty good success in getting people over these addictions, or is it the kind of thing where it never goes away, like alcoholism, where they have to totally stay off it, or what? How does that work?
Yes, Jeannie, that's such a great point you bring up, because, like alcohol or other substance addictions where we can just have, go cold turkey. It doesn't really work well with our digital gadgets, because most of us, for our jobs, we have to be emailing, we have to, a lot of jobs now are asking you to Facebook all the time or to tweet. And so that's what really complicates it, is that it used to be that if you didn't drink or if you didn't go to a bar, you weren't going to become an alcoholic. But now everyone is at risk for developing an addiction. But I believe that I have had success, and I believe the book will also help people to learn how to manage it. So that we can, like I said before, know what is sort of your hot button. The woman I just spoke with said it was words with friends. Assess that. That's kind of like with food. Oh, that's my trigger, chocolate, or maybe it's carbs. And then once you're aware of that, then managing that well. But I do believe it is going to be an ongoing battle and challenge as long as we have technology, which is going to be probably forever.
Wow. That doesn't give me a whole lot of hope. Well, how can parents establish a digital wellness plan for their children?
The most important thing is to build trust through communication. So, like I did with my son, I sat him down and just said, this is what these video game is doing to your brain, and the damage that it can have for you. And so if your kids really feel like, I love you and I want what's best for you, I think that's really important that we, with our children, build that trust. And they say the number one fear parents have is, how much screen time should my children have? And so I think it's important that's the American Academy of Pediatrics has given us some guidelines, which I'd like to actually share.
That would be great.
Between the ages of 0 to 2, 0 screen time. Now that, I just want to say, flies in the face of all the baby apps that we see, and there's it's a big business, all the makers with the baby apps, but they're really saying ideally no screen time before the age of 2, because the brain is developing at such a fast rate. You don't want it to be wired at that early age for electronics. Between the ages of 3 to 5, 1 hour a day, and then 6 to 12, 90 minutes a day, 13 to 19, 2 hours a day. Most are spending well over 8 hours a day. So I think that's important to know. And also, I have both my sons have Covenant Eyes, and I really want to recommend that to parents. That's a software they can get on the smartphone. It's not a filter, not a blocking software, but it's accountability software, so they can select an accountability partner, either you, the parent, or someone that they select. And if there's any questionable sites that they go on, they will get an email. And I think in this day and age, with such easy access to all the internet pornography, it's really important to have those boundaries set up.
That's called Covenant Eyes. And is it covenanteyes.com where they would find that? More digital?
Yes. Yeah, it's a great program to have.
Okay. Well, you talk about, in the book, the Digital Fast Challenge. Why don't you tell us about that?
We came up with a national campaign called the Digital Fast Challenge, and it's on Facebook. And we just are asking people to take 24 hours, preferably 1 day a week, where they would take a Sabbath, a fast from their technology. If not that, at least once a month or once every 3 months, where they just unplug from their digital world, and not just unplug, but plug in. So be very intentional to use that 24 hours to plug into their time with God, to plug into the people that live in the same home with them. And it's been amazing. We've had this all over the country. We've gone to universities and promoted it. And it's so interesting to hear the responses that the young people especially have given, where they said, wow, I've lived with these same people for 3 years and I didn't even really know them. And when I took this fast, we actually sat at the table and had conversations, and this is really great. So that's one thing we want to really promote.
It's really sad that they have to take a fast to be able to develop relationships nowadays.
Yeah.
That it's tragic what's happened. Oh my goodness. Well, how you already talked about closing your own computer. Are there other ways that parents can set a good example for their own children?
Absolutely. I think a big part is to have even family contracts. We have in the book and on our website digital contracts where you can sit as a family and come up with what your rules are going to be. And I think to be able to talk about that as a family, because it's going to be very unique for each situation, and come up with those contracts and having the children sign them. I do have my own digital boundaries that I think everyone should write out, and I keep these with me, and I'll just share some of them with you.
That would be great.
After praying about it, this is what
You can do them all if you
come
like.
up with. Okay. So my first digital boundary is don't check my smartphone until after my morning devotions. And that's so important because, research shows that most people have checked their smartphone before they even get out of bed, many during the night. And I don't sleep with my smartphone next to the bed. It's down in the kitchen. I just don't want that temptation. And then I end my digital day by 10 p.m. Some people end it at 3 p.m., some at 6. For me, I like to have that as a cutoff. Don't check my smartphone when meeting with a friend. Take regular digital fasts. Limit checking emails or text to once an hour. And then my little motto here, real people trump virtual people, because that's a real problem.
Oh, yeah.
Seeing people at dinner, face-to-face, person across from them, and they're sitting on their smartphone. And then pray daily for God to help me become a good steward of my virtual life. And I think that's really important because we pray about other areas of our life, and we pray for our health and to be good stewards of our health and all the resources God's given us, our financial life for sure, but our virtual life really needs to be prayed about. And we have a sanctifying prayer at the end of our book to just say, digital technology is not going away. It's wonderful in so many ways, but we need to ask God to sanctify it and to be used as a tool. Technology is there to serve us. It's not our idol. We don't serve it, and we want to be good stewards of it.
Yeah. One of the things that amazes me is when you've got a bunch of kids sitting around a table at Starbucks and they're texting each other instead of talking to each other.
Yes. It's called absent presence.
Yeah.
And it's actually the term that's coined, that you're present with the person, but you're really absent because you're with other people. And I'm really concerned about how that's going to affect how children attach, attachment styles, because to have a good attachment with someone, you need to feel seen and valued and heard. And so much of our distraction, as we're distracted from one another, it's going to be interesting to see in 10 to 15 years how that's going to impact how we attach. And so I think it's important for parents to know that's what your kids need. They need to feel seen and to feel valued and heard. And every time you close that laptop lid and you can have that eye contact and you have that interaction with it and you listening, really listen, that can really build those bonds, those attachment bonds that God's created for us to have.
Absolutely. Yeah. People are so much more important than things.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, you explained that it's hard to find silence in the digital age and that we're losing our God space.
Yeah.
How can we find that silence and why do we need it?
Yeah. So that is really our greatest concern as we wrote this book, was the damage done to our God space. We say we ask Jesus into our heart, but we really experience God in our brains, in that place where we contemplate, where we meditate. And now research is telling us that if we overengage in the digital world, we're not going to have the ability to be able to meditate and contemplate and ultimately experience God. And what I found so interesting as I did the research was one of the spiritual disciplines, and specifically silence, is able to, as we experience silence and solitude with God, we actually can heal the damage done to our prefrontal cortex, which I find so amazing, that it is reversible.
He says, "Be still and know that I am God."
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. In Psalm 46:10. And I always say, if I'm not still, then I won't know that He's God. And I think that when I found that piece, the research on that, I thought that was so amazing, because Mother Teresa would always say we need silence to touch souls. And it's in that place of silence that our brains can heal, that we can hear from God, because a big part of our relationship with God is not just talking to Him, as important that it is, but it's the listening. And what does God want me to do? What does He want to say to me?
Right.
And so having that silence, and that is really such a challenge, because our gadgets are so noisy, and there's always a text or a tweet or something that's drawing us away from that silence. But just being able to take, if someone can take a silent fast, I did this for the first time this year. I used to always tell my clients, take a fast, and go and a silence fast, where you go away and do a silent and solitude retreat. But I'd actually never done one, and I did it, and it was amazing. But I know for many of us we can't do that, so I say take a 5 or 10 minute mini solitude silent retreat during your day, whether it's just going to the bathroom, but just get silent, get still, so you can hear God, because our digital world is wiring us for distraction and really the antithesis of what we need to experience God.
Yeah. Wow. Well, it really it just grieves my heart to see these children missing out on the relationships that they can have with one another, with other family members, and especially with their parents and grandparents and other significant adults in their lives who have lived and can impart wisdom to them and that kind of thing, and they're missing out on it because of something like a silly game. It just breaks my heart. So I'm really glad that you wrote this book and that you've shared it with us, and I really hope that people will pay attention and start making the changes that are necessary.
Right.
So where can they find you online?
At thedigitalinvasion.com.
That's easy.
Yes.
Again, Dr. Sylvia Hart Frejd, and thank you so much for being our guest.
Thank you, Jeanne. I really appreciate it.
Stand for